Coming up on the Broadway Shuffle, we give you 3 reasons why you should pick Texas Tech to go to the Final Four. That and much more next on the Broadway Shuffle. All right, episode 62 of the Broadway Shuffle, wherever you may be and however you may be listening, we are glad you are here. I am Brennan. I've got Zyler, Conrad, and Clayton with me. And if you are new to the show, we would appreciate if you would hit the subscribe button on YouTube so you never miss an episode, or follow us on Spotify or Apple. We are 12 subscribers away from 1,000 on YouTube, and we would love to hit that number from this episode, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Today, guys, couple days away from March Madness. We got 48 hours to get all of our brackets finalized, and we are getting specifically into the West region today and targeting specifically why we think that Texas Tech will be the team to come out of that region and why you, the listener, should pick them as your Final Four participant from the West. And we've got 3 main reasons why we think that is going to happen, and we're going to get right into it. So, Conrad, I'm going to go to you first for reason 1. Reason number 1, why will Texas Tech go to the Final Four?
Yeah, so we could give numerous reasons why Texas Tech will go to the Final Four, but first and foremost, the reason is that we are one of the strongest 3 seeds in recent memory. This is the strongest 3 seed grouping of all time, according to Will Warren. We have all the 3 seeds together have a 26.44 adjusted efficiency rating per KenPom, and that is the highest since, you guessed it, 2019, the year you made the Final Four. So this is a very strong group of 3 seeds, Texas Tech being the strongest in our opinion. And so you do have a very, very good chance to make the Final Four based off of that reason alone.
Now, Zyler, my mom is going to be listening to this episode because she's a big bracket buster. She loves filling it out.
Sure.
For people that might not know what KenPom is and adjusted efficiency, could you give a quick high level of what that really means and what the strength of the 3 seeds really is from that metric?
Yeah, so KenPom is a tempo adjusted efficiency metric. So essentially, you'll see a lot of commentators talk and they'll say this team allows or scores the most points in the country, or they allow the fewest amount of points, but none of that takes into account tempo. If you're taking 25 seconds on the shot clock each time, obviously you're going to allow a team to score less. Conversely, if you're shooting every 6 seconds, you're going to score a lot more. So KenPom takes a lot of those efficiency metrics and adjusts all of those. So you're actually ranked 7th in the country in that regard. The gap between the 3 and the 14s, and this is from Will Warren in his newsletter, it's at 20.96. That's the highest in his database's history. There is a pretty even gap between the 3s, the 6s, and the 11s, which I think is good for you. I think Drake has a chance to beat Missouri and ultimately make your path to the Final Four even clearer. KenPom does a really good job. He's basically what Vegas lines are based off of at this point. So really, really good advanced analytics. If you want a good idea of where your team kind of ranks out, check out KenPom.com. That's what you should be looking at.
Yeah, and so we're talking about the 3 seeds this year, Clayton. You've got Kentucky. Obviously, they've been prone to some upsets in recent memory. Even, I believe last year, Yale upset them. You have Iowa State, who is now missing one of their top players in Keyshawn Gilbert. And then you've got your, Texas Tech as well as Wisconsin against Montana. So you're looking at, some of these 3 seeds and just the depth. I mean, Kentucky and, one of the best conferences of all time in the SEC. Iowa State obviously was in the top 5 throughout much of the season in the Big 12. And then Wisconsin, one of the top teams, as well. And then Texas Tech, of course. What makes this group so special?
Yeah, I think there's a number. Iowa State was, sorry,
you're welcome to go. Sorry, I was
one final point. I do want to say Kentucky got beat by Oakland last year. It wasn't Yale. So just before somebody calls us out on that.
Sorry, Yale beat Auburn.
Go ahead, Clayton.
I apologize.
Yeah, no. You look at Kentucky specifically. They have some incredible wins. I believe they beat. I can't remember if they beat Auburn and Alabama or just Alabama. Iowa State, obviously, they were top 6 or 7 in KenPom for a lot of the year. They've obviously been dealing with some injuries, and now with Gilbert being out for the tournament, I'm not super high on them. Same with Kentucky with Robinson and potentially Lamont Butler. But I definitely think the Tech is the strongest of the 3 seeds this year. And yeah, like Zyler mentioned, I'm not expecting an upset from any of these 14 seeds over a 3.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and when you're looking at bracket strategy, this is the other thing. You got to take some shots. You got to take some risks. And if you're looking for a 3 seed to pick, I think Texas Tech is clearly the one that I would want to take a shot on. They've got the weakest 2 seed from an adjusted efficiency margin. They're actually, they're at a 50% chance to make the Sweet 16. They're about to pick them with St. John's to make the Elite 8. So you're looking at, 50% chance on average that this is going to be the Elite 8 representative. So really good value there.
That's great value. Well, Clayton, I'll go to you for reason 2. Zyler just alluded to it a little bit, but assuming Texas Tech gets past their second round matchup, and we'll get into the Missouri Drake scenario here in a second. Tell us why Texas Tech would be able to handle St. John's in that Sweet 16 matchup.
Yeah, so just some general stats on St. John's. So they have the 11th best odds for the Final Four at 11.4%, and no 2 seed that was below 14% has ever made the Final Four. Also, no 1 or 2 seed that was unranked in the preseason AP poll has ever made the Final Four, which the 2 teams that fit that criteria this year are St. John's and then Michigan State. So the odds, are against St. John's to make it. So if you were to match up with them, and then also, Zyler alluded to Ken Palm, you're a good margin ahead of St. John's. If I can find them, actually they have closed the gap a bit, but you would definitely be a favorite over St. John's on a neutral court if you were to beat UNCW and then either Missouri or Drake.
Yep.
So odds are in that matchup, you would be the favorite to get to the Elite 8.
Yeah, and one thing, where do you think, in terms of talking about St. John's for a second, obviously Rick Pitino, great job. They're a phenomenal story, the Big East champions. There's a lot behind St. John's, and a lot of people are picking them to potentially compete with Florida. They've got a lot of physical size. Their defense is just absolutely insane, but they struggle offensively, where Texas Tech is obviously very efficient on the offensive side of the ball. Are we, with that matchup potentially, in the forecast, what do you think Texas Tech would have to do to beat St. John's? Would you need to hit, 35, 40% of your 3-pointers, or would you be able to get into a grinded out game with them, Z?
Yeah, that team reminds me a lot of your 2022 team, a team that maybe struggled a bit offensively, maybe a little challenged from the outside, but really, really can lock in on the defensive end. And you saw, the kryptonite for that 2022 team was if a team gets really hot from outside, it's just susceptible. You can't stop the 3-point barrage. You are totally built to do that to them. Now, I'm not saying you will. St. John's is a great team. They've had a great season. They deserve all the flowers that I'm getting. Don't hear me say St. John's is a bad team, but they are susceptible to some of the things that you do really well. If I'm St. John's, I was not hoping to see Texas Tech as my 3 seed. That's a matchup that I wouldn't be super keen on.
Yeah, in terms
they're
of
kind of.
Or go ahead, Clay.
Sorry. They're kind of like a poor man's Houston, who you've already seen Tech be on the road and then, play a close game without 2 of your starters. I feel like their defense, and a lot of good defenses, is built to stop drives and penetration. And Tech's offense, like Zyler said, is a lot of jump shots and, from the outside. So like Zyler said, your offense is built to counteract their defense.
Yeah, and I think, Conrad, all the hype, you look at the other 2 seeds and the hype that's kind of around them. You obviously have Tennessee and Alabama, who, again, mentioning the SEC, as much as I hate to do so, one of the best conferences of all time in a regular college basketball regular season. And then you have Michigan State, who is a very trendy pick to the Final Four as well. If you're a Texas Tech fan, obviously you're looking at St. John's as probably the 2 seed you are most happy with. You feel pretty confident that you're lucky to kind of avoid those other 3 and potentially get a matchup with St. John's to get to the Elite 8?
I definitely have more respect for the other 2 seeds than I do St. John's. No disrespect to them. I just think we match up technically better with St. John's because of our strengths in terms of offensive prowess that you just mentioned. But those other teams, they were at one point throughout the year, all of them in the conversation for potentially a 1 seed. So those are very, very good 2 seeds on the others that we don't have to face. And so the fact that you do get St. John's, which Big East, again, we're not trying to take anything away from them, but they're just not on the same, they don't play the same type of competition that we might play, and that, obviously the SEC schools play that you just mentioned. So at the same time, I don't think you should necessarily be scared of St. John's. I think if we do get to them, like has already been alluded to, we should be expecting to beat them. Like, that's not a team that scares me. Like, they really do not scare me. I feel very confident with the guys you've got, with the coaching staff you've got, that you can go into St. John, go into that matchup, assuming we get there, and really do something special. So I'm extremely confident in that matchup, but we got to focus on UNC Wilmington and then Missouri or Drake first before we get there. But that is not a 2 seed that really scares me at all.
Yeah, and I think we do want to give credit to UNC Wilmington, Missouri Drake. Like, those are teams, you can lose to UNC Wilmington.
Yeah.
That could clearly, anybody can lose on any given day. That's what makes this tournament so great. You want to make sure that you respect your opponent. Everybody deserves to be here, unless if you're UNCW without the W, that team maybe doesn't deserve to be here, but everybody else does. But I think, Brennan, the point you're going to transition to is everybody's going to say, what about Florida? They're playing so well. They're really hot right now. They've won the SEC tournament. They've looked dominant, and they absolutely have. I think they would be a really tough matchup for you. The one thing that I was looking at as I was building out my bracket, you try to look at it objectively when you're trying to win your bracket pools and win money. And I always make sure that I run the most similar efficiency profiles from Bart Torvik. It's something that you can run and say, what teams have been built like this in the past with their seed and everything like that. This Florida team has a really similar profile to some good teams. The UConn 2023 team who won, the Kansas 2022 team that won, but they're also really similar to that Duke 2011 team that was a 1 seed and lost in the Sweet 16. The average wins for a team of this profile is 2.9. That's well below expectation for a 1 seed. The average wins for you at the 3 seed is also 2.9. So from an efficiency perspective, you are both projected to win the same amount of games. This is not going to be some sort of huge shock if Tech beats you. So if you're looking for, a great value, this is going to be somebody that's picked in less than probably 7 to 8% of brackets. This is a Final Four team that I think really does deserve some consideration, and they've got a shot against Florida. Maryland could easily knock out Florida. And I think that 8-9 game, you got who's on that side? You've got UConn and Oklahoma. They'll both give them a game too. I think you've really got a shot here. You've obviously got to get there, but it's not the home run, knockout, drag out thing. When you look at Duke, average wins for a team of that profile is 4.9. It's basically make the championship game. So very different profile.
Yeah. And again, the whole point of this video is not necessarily to say like this is, there's a lot of chaos that could go on in the bracket, of course. And we'll get to that in a second. That'll be our bonus reason. What happens if chaos ensues in the bracket and what that might mean for Texas Tech. But this is 3 reasons why we feel if Texas Tech were to get to the Final Four, why you listening should pick Texas Tech to the Final Four. These are the best reasons that we have for that. Obviously, a ton of respect needs to be given to every matchup because you could be. We've seen 16 seeds win. We've seen 15 seeds win. We've seen 14 seeds win. And so we saw one last year in Oakland. So I apologize to Oakland for not giving the respect that was due. And that could be you still. Like I'm not overlooking that, but these are the reasons why we think it won't be you and why you'll be cutting down the nets in the Elite Eight heading to San Antonio. But I want to stay on Florida for a second, Z, because I was a little surprised. I mean, all year, I felt like it was Duke and Cooper Flagg, Auburn and Broome, Alabama and Mark Sears. They were all, I know Florida was great, but it's like nationally, I didn't hear them as like, this is the team to beat in the tournament. And then the bracket gets revealed and all of a sudden, like everybody is picking Florida to win the national championship. So maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention, but something seemed to shift here in the SEC tournament or in March on why the Gators quickly became like the top team to beat. And I'm not sure if I'm necessarily buying that. It kind of just seems to me like the hype got so quickly. And I think Seth Greenberg this morning on ESPN said, this is this year's UConn. Like they're just going to run through everyone. That to me seems a little stretch there, Clayton.
I agree. If there is a team that is this year's UConn, it's definitely Duke. I mean, they're one of the best teams on KenPom of all time. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I remember 3 weeks ago, I was already planning on picking Florida in my bracket pools because I felt like they would be, unpopular and you had a shot to win. And now, it's either them or Duke that's like the most picked team on the bracket. So they definitely, are not sneaking up on anyone.
And go ahead, Conrad.
Well, Brennan, we know the answer to that question of why Florida has become so popular. 2 words: Greg Sankey. That's the reason. That's the reason. He's manipulated ESPN as he's done numerous times before. Greg Sankey is the reason that Florida has become so popular. I mean, does anybody disagree?
They're good.
Any Greg Sankey and any Greg Sankey slander,
But yeah.
I'm here for. So I'll
No,
take
obviously,
that point, Conrad.
obviously, Florida is very good. I'm messing around a little bit, but you never know with Greg Sankey. He's a sneaky man.
Let me ask a
There
question.
is something to be. Oh yeah, go ahead, Brennan.
I wanted to say, what percentage would your bracket be if you ended up like you do all this at once? You go, SEC teams 0 for 14. What do you think your bracket would end up being at the end? What percentage would you think you'd have right? I mean,
so it was actually going to be my point. So Kim Palm had an article the other day where he wrote, "Is the SEC overrated?" He thought they had, kind of an above average performance or above expectation performance in the non-con. And so you think if regression is a real thing, that's going to revert back to the mean. He wasn't saying that they're not good, but you've seen this in past. The best conference of all time used to be the Big 12, and it was last year, and they had a putrid tournament performance. I don't even think we had a team in the Elite Eight because you perform so well in the non-con, and eventually regression catches up to you. Mm-hmm. You can't always shoot 50% from three. It does come back to bite you. So there's a world. I read a lot about this. Conference correlation is something that's actually kind of an interesting strategy when you look at playing a bracket. So either fading or really going in on a particular conference is shown to be, a high variance proposition to winning. So maybe fading the SEC will be a thing that happens here. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And we're going to get so much hate for this. I already know, because people are going to think you guys are idiots. Like every SEC team is going to be in the Final Four, and that's fine. You can think that.
Yep.
But I would love to see a bracket where it's like, I hate this. I'm boycotting Greg Sankey. I'm boycotting the SEC. Auburn and Florida are going to be the first 1 seeds to lose to a 16 seed in the same tournament. That would
awesome.
Be
unbelievable. I would pay
we should make one of those just for fun
for that.
I'll do an anti-SEC bracket just for fun. We'll see what the percentage is at the end. That'll be nice. I'll have Norfolk State in the Final Four or something.
Florida can name their number.
Yeah,
they are going to beat Norfolk by 1 million.
They did beat Missouri one year as a 15 seed.
They did. That is true.
So they have upset history. Just saying. Okay. Well, another thing I wanted to get to. So our 3 reasons before I guess I get there is. No, reason number 1, again, the 3 seeds historically this year, complete dominant, and you are a 3 seed. Another point on that, in 2019, when Texas Tech went to the Final Four, to your point, Conrad, you were also a 3 seed in the West region, so you've had good luck in this position before. St. John's 2 seed, Clayton, reason number 2, and then Florida's analytical metric number 3, Zyler, excellent, but comparable to yours as well. So the 3 reasons there is, you feel like if you're Texas Tech, you got a very good draw in this region. But let's get to, we kind of need to touch on Drake, Missouri a little bit, and then we'll get to some chaos scenarios. But looking at that second round matchup specifically, Drake, slow team, Missouri scores a lot of points, gives up a lot of points. That 6-11 game is going to be very interesting. I mean, you really could see both of those teams. Like I could see a scenario where Drake easily beats Missouri. What's the matchup like? What would you prefer? I mean, would you like to face another slow, a 30 team slow?
Yeah.
Drake or a fast-paced Missouri with bad defense?
I think Missouri's a little more volatile. They're best. They beat Florida at Florida. They've also lost some weird games, but I'll take the more consistent team. So give me Drake if I can choose it. Missouri's just such a weird team. Obviously you do have to deal with UNC Wilmington, and we'll talk about them in a moment. But I'd love to see Drake. Their coach has lost, I think it's in the last 8 or 9 years, he's lost 21 total games. He just doesn't lose. Generally just a really, really good coach. You tried to hire Ben McCollum, for those of you that are familiar with Tech basketball. You tried to hire him to replace Dave Smart this past year. It almost got there, and then he ended up taking this head coaching job. So another good eye from, I guess, Kirby and Grant on who they want to bring into their program. Jeff Linder was obviously a really good second option. So yeah, I'll be rooting for Drake. I think that'd be a lot of fun. The little guys don't get many opportunities, and any chance that I can get to pull for them over an SEC team, that's an easy sell for me.
Yeah.
Drake feels like the type of team that gets one upset. Like I don't see them winning 2 games in 3 days against teams that are better than them. They just don't have the talent yet. Obviously, like a great coaching job, but I think they have 4 players who were in D2 last year. And then Bennett Sturts would be one of the best players on the floor, and no matter who they play. But outside of that, they just don't have the talent to keep up. On the second game of a weekend, in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a great reason why I think Texas Tech will be in the Sweet 16 against potentially St. John's. But another point, and now that we kind of transition into what if chaos happens in this region, Conrad? I know your bracket's going to be filled with a 13 versus 4, 11 versus 6, 15 versus. I know everything's going to go crazy. What's funny about the bottom of the bracket here is you've arguably got like 3 of the most legendary coaches in the last 30 plus years at the 7, 10, and 2 seeds in your region. Calipari at Arkansas, Patino at St. John's, and obviously Bill Self at Kansas. I mean, the 7-10 Arkansas-Kansas matchup, either of those teams could obviously either beat St. John's as well, and you're going to have one of the best coaching matchups in all of the tournament in that second round matchup if St. John's obviously doesn't get upset. So there could be a really interesting, talk about a very engaging second round game, either Arkansas, Kansas versus St. John's. That is going to be one of the best and most watched games of the tournament, probably just based off who the coaches are.
Yeah,
that
because coaching
awesome.
matters so much in college basketball as a whole, but specifically in the tournament. And with those guys having been there and done it before, all won national championships, all, as you mentioned, absolutely legendary coaches. When you think about those matchups and what that could potentially look like, that's going to be much must-watch TV because of not only the coaches on the court, but also the type of talent you have on all of those teams. Now, obviously, Arkansas and Kansas did not do what anyone thought they would have done coming into this year, but they still could potentially click it all into gear because anything can happen in March. But I'm really excited to see what that looks like just because of who those coaches are, because I think that's going to have a huge impact on that half of the region and what things look like moving forward.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting too, like on your side of the bracket, on Texas Tech's side of the bracket, if you want to root for chaos, obviously outside of yourself. Like we'd love to see St. John's lose to a 15. You would love to see Maryland drop to the 13. And who's the 13 in your region?
You have who does Maryland play?
Oh, Grand Canyon.
Grand Canyon.
Decent team,
probably. Maryland's a trendy pick, and Maryland would definitely give Florida, like you said, Z earlier, a lot of trouble too. So what if regional
Maryland's
chaos
starting 5 is good. They're really
very good. So what Z? In your mind, like, what is the most likely? We'll all go. Let's take Texas Tech out because we're obviously just gave 3 reasons. We'll go to the Final Four. So 15, 12, 11, and 13. What's the most likely upset you would pick in the West region?
Colorado State's favored over Memphis as the 12th seed. So if you didn't know that, they're a 2.5 point favorite. That'd be the one that you'd probably have to pick. I think Drake could get it done. I don't think Grand Canyon has the horses to run with Maryland's size. I think if I had to pick one, it would be Colorado State. But keep your eye on Drake. That's one that's just going to be a low tempo game. And if Missouri gets the bad shooting variance and Drake gets the really good shooting variance, it's really hard to come back on Drake because they will take 22 to 28 seconds to shoot the ball every time. If they get up 8 on you with 8 minutes left, you're going to need to score on almost every possession. So that's the one I'd watch out for.
I feel like in this region, it's the second round that has a lot of potential upsets. None of us would be shocked if UConn beat Florida. They're 2-time defending champs, Dan Hurley.
Back to back.
Same thing with Kansas over St. John's.
Even Arkansas over St. John's.
Yeah, for sure. Or even, Missouri over Tech if we're, going against what we talked about the rest of the video. But I think the second
really
round
they're a really good 6 seed.
Yeah, for sure. And then, if Florida made it past UConn, I could definitely see Maryland beating Florida. They match up really well with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maryland has the size to compete with. Like Florida has, I think they have 4 guys over 6'11". Like they just have some monsters. And Maryland has the size to compete with them.
Yeah, I think the most beautiful part of the whole tournament, I just can't wait for Thursday morning, is the moment the 11-10 game tips off, everything that everyone's talked about usually just goes out the window by like 3 p.m.
Totally.
It's like, here's the 9-8 match. Yeah, and I love they always start with a 9-8 matchup. So it's like immediately 50% of the brackets are toast. And then it's and then you're just like, all right, then here's just like 13-4 that's super trendy. And I believe that might be the Maryland game. First, I might be wrong on that though, but it's you typically see some upsets there, and you just don't know. Like I was watching highlights of the Furman Virginia game
Furman, Virginia
2 years ago. Furman, Virginia.
Yeah.
And like
That
Virginia,
game
if you're unfamiliar, please go look this up. It's one of the greatest upset just scenarios that's happened in March Madness in a while. But You're up 2. The point guard just chunks the ball midair, and then for
It was
do you
Kihei
pronounce it?
Clark.
Yeah, how do you pronounce it?
The Paladins, Furman and the Paladins.
Yeah, and they hit a 3 with 2 seconds, and Kevin Harlan and Stan Van Gundy
Just going
just
nuts.
going nuts. And you can see their it's like moments like that make this so special, and you just hope and pray it doesn't happen to you because it's going to happen. It's just somewhere it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You just hope it's not you, and we don't think it will be because we think Texas Tech will be in the Final Four.
Yeah, and a couple of quick notes on UNC Wilmington. I mean, this is going to be a bigger team than you, just so we give them their due. They have some big guys, and you're going to need to bang down low a little bit. They've got some guys that are going to pose some challenges for you defending the post, but they've got one guard that you really need to worry about. They actually have a guy that played for the Fairleigh Dickinson team that beat Purdue 2 years ago. So he's the white shooter. So it'll be very easy to find him. But yeah, I mean, I think that'll be a closer game than probably, I think the line's at like 15 and a half, 16. I expect that to be like a 10 to 12 point game. Like I think I would bet on UNC Wilmington, but you should come out ahead. You're going to get a lot of 3-point looks. You're going to get that short roll that you did against Kansas. They play very similarly to Kansas, just like the discount brand version. So that game plan that you had against them should work pretty well. You just got to hit shots.
One of the issues, or maybe not issues, but something to take note of in that game, which I'm sure all of our listeners will, is that game tips off at 9:10 p.m. Central Time. I don't know about you guys, but I may need to drink a coffee or two just to stay awake because that's going to be a late one, and that doesn't necessarily excite me. Not only for myself having to stay up to watch that, but also having to anything that the worst team can get on you is kind of a plus for them, and having to tip off that late, it's uncomfortable for both teams. But especially, it's maybe not an advantage, but it's just something that maybe benefits the worst team in a way. I don't know. That's just a thought. I'm thinking out loud. Let me know in the comments if you disagree with me on that, but that doesn't necessarily excite me for a lot of reasons.
I worry what the vibes are going to be like in the arena because you forget that a lot of the games are played the same day. All the Wichita games are played today. And so Drake and Missouri will play before you, which I don't get why the 6 gets to play before the 3. That's just weird to me. But what if Drake knocks Missouri off? Does the energy in the building feel weird? That's something that I don't know that really has any sort of predictive value, but you felt it when I've gone to the games. You still feel kind of the residual energy from the game prior. And if it's a bunch of blowouts, it feels harder for the underdog. So maybe something to monitor, not necessarily something that's statistically relevant though.
Last year when
Clay, I was going to say go bring up last year.
Yeah, Oakland beat Kentucky. And then, as Tech fans, we were like, oh, we have to win. But then everyone in that arena was cheering against you for NC State. Totally. And it was like an away game.
Yeah, it's like every time Burns hit a shot, it just felt like the world was catching on fire.
Even when he got the ball in the post, people stood up and
going nuts.
Yeah.
Which that dude was one of the most annoying basketball players to watch. No offense to him, but he was so annoying for me to watch. Dude,
who was the white center for NC State? He was much more annoying to me.
Willinghouse or number 34, Middlebrooks.
I don't remember what
Middlebrooks.
Yes. No. Middlebrooks.
Yeah,
is Middlebrooks the tall guy?
Middlebrook, right?
Yeah.
Dude, it was just like you watch the player and you're like, this guy is not good, and he is giving us buckets. That's like the worst feeling. It's not as bad when it's a really good player and you can tip your cap, but I was just like, this guy is not that good.
Let's stop the bad vibes here on the Broadway Shuffle. That is in the past. We're in the present. Not even thinking about NC State anymore.
One thing I will say, this is a weird. So I got 2 questions for you guys, and we'll kind of wrap up. Tournament bracketing principles. When you fill out your bracket, how do you do it? Do you go, do you do the whole first round and then you go do the second round? Do you go by region? How do you guys do it?
Okay,
I usually have.
Or go ahead.
Go ahead, Brennan.
I was going to say, I like to build up my confidence. So I go by seed line. So I'm like, all right, the 1 seed's cake. I'm 4 for 4.
Yeah.
And then in my my head, I'm like mathematically going like, all right, the 2, like I'm feeling pretty confident.
Oh, okay. Wow.
But by the time I get to the 4 seeds, I'm like, what do I do? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, it only lasts me like 12 games. And then the rest, I'm like, crap. I don't know what to do here. But that's kind of how I go through it. I don't go by region, and then I go to the next matchups in each region and go from there.
Okay, nice. Clayton?
Yeah, I pick my champion ahead of time. I pencil them in, and then I pick other teams that I feel like have no shot of getting upset before a certain round. I'll just pencil them in, and then I'll go back. And I always have Yeah, I always have at least one 11 or 12 seed in the Sweet 16, which this year
Okay.
it's UCSD for me.
Nice.
And
Yeah,
for the
I'm like
Broadway
a-
Shuffle, I believe, right? I think we picked USCD to the
Yeah,
Sweet
yeah, yeah.
16.
Yeah.
You would have to hold me at
Yeah.
gunpoint to make me pick Michigan in that game. That's what
Yeah.
those are my exact words. Yeah, I
Speaking
go
of-
region
or
by
go ahead.
region, but then I feel like I get hot, and so I'll I usually go round by round, excuse me, but then I'll feel like a region gets hot for me, like in my mind. I'm like, I feel like I see the
You
tournament
feel
unfolding.
it. Yes.
Yeah, so I'll like accidentally fill out an Elite Eight team, and then I'm like, oh crap, got to go back to what I was doing. So it's kind of all over the place.
Conrad, what
Yeah.
was yours?
Yeah, so speaking of brackets, we haven't mentioned it yet to this point. Join the Broadway Shuffle Bracket Challenge. The link will be in the description below. Play in our challenge with us. There will be some prizes announced later on this week. Made a post on social media about that. So join the Broadway Shuffle Bracket Challenge. We're using ESPN because they have the best app. But yeah, join us, and looking forward to seeing who comes out on top. I think it'll be probably me, but we'll give you everybody else a chance. Speaking of how I do my bracket, I do the same thing as Clayton for the champion. I know who my champion is going to be ahead of time, but then what I will do is I'll go region by region and get to the final four, and then as I look at it throughout the week, because I've done it and I'm going to go make a ton of changes, and then right before the game tips off on Thursday morning, I'm going to go make some more changes because I don't have any confidence in what I tend to pick, and so I'll go champion and then region by region, and then go work backwards from the final four to kind of make any edits that need to make.
Dude, the grip it and rip it strategy started working for me more lately, where it's like, I'm just going to do this once. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not even going to read any articles, and I'm just going to let it go. But then to Conrad's point, I get to like Thursday at 9. I'm like, let me do like a couple more just in case.
Yeah.
I need Butler to be good. I'm going to brag on myself. But in 2010, I picked Butler to beat Duke in the national title, and I had like 99.4%. I was in love with Gordon Hayward. I don't know why.
Oh, dude, I can totally see that.
Yeah, I love Gordon Hayward.
I totally understand why.
And
Let us know why you think in the comments below.
That was the game.
He was great.
He was great,
Brad
dude.
Stevens.
In fact, I wore number 1 in high school because of Shelvin Mack, their point guard, oddly enough, too. I just loved Butler and Brad Stevens. Weird. But, Gordon Hayward obviously almost hit the that
would have been the greatest NCAA shot of all time.
And I was like, dude, I had won I was in 7th grade, and, I just need Butler to be good, because I would always pick Butler when they're in the tournaments, and it typically went well for me. And I don't have them now. And since Butler has started going downhill, my brackets have just gone kaput.
Yeah, you need Butler back.
I need the Bulldogs there in Indiana to get good again.
Brennan just went back 15 years here for you listeners on the Broadway Shuffle.
Yes, I've been doing this a long time. Yeah, and it's hasn't gone well for me. Clayton, to your point,
some of our listeners aren't even 15 years old yet.
That's true. That's true. Clay, it's funny though. Clay brings up, this happens every year too. Clay, we do this. I mentioned it last episode, but we do a bracket together. So Clay, maybe we can do that together on an episode here in the next day or two. But Clay's like, this team's not going to lose. And every year, because Clay just said, I picked the teams for sure they won't lose. And I'm like, all right, I'm riding. And then we'll be watching a game, and it's like, crap. Oakland is Kentucky. You're just kind of
that year the Illinois was so good. That was my team. I was like, there is no shot that they lose. And then lo and behold, they lose to Loyola Chicago in the second round.
Yeah.
Yes, dude.
Dude, I feel like Illinois had some tough break. They've had some good teams and just not really had a lot of tournament success.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I mean, if I could give like the listeners just one piece of bracket advice, just do it and enjoy. If you've got a favorite color, do the favorite color. If you know if your third cousins live in or went to Yale, pick Yale. Like, get a little. You might as well get weird with it, because weird things will happen, and you're really just kind of hoping you hit. You hope the dealer, bust a little bit, and you got a blackjack. I mean, that's kind of what you're doing here. There's a reason there's never been a perfect bracket. You won't be the one to have a perfect bracket this year.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you do, and you want to invest in the Broadway Shuffle, we would greatly appreciate.
We'd really appreciate that.
But
you got to do.
Or go ahead, Clay.
Sorry. You got to do 3 brackets, in my opinion. You do one that you do right after the bracket's revealed, and you don't touch it. You can't make any changes. Then you do your main bracket, and then you do one that's what you hope happens, with like a bunch of upsets and your team going all the way.
I like that.
You're exactly right.
That is great, Clay. And then you do one with your best friend together and see how smart you are. Yeah. So really for. Have you guys filled out your Broadway Shuffle challenge bracket? Like, do you have the bracket you're riding on already ready to go.
It is not ready. It's still cooking.
No. Yeah.
Dude, one of the
I'm
biggest mistakes
smoking
I
it.
ever
I'm
made.
doing it low and slow for a long time.
If you ever learn anything, it's when I was younger, I would be like, oh, I got to listen to all these guys. Who knows what they're talking about on college basketball? Seth Davis. I see him all the time. Let's listen to him. Let me do what this guy does. That guy picks every upset in every region. And I was like, oh, yeah, dude, this guy knows what he's talking about. It will be the worst bracket of all time if you listen to the TV heads. You got to find the real grinders that know what they're talking about if you're looking for advice. If they're on TV, they don't know what they're talking about. That would be my advice to you.
And Z, that's a great point. I mean, to that point, I was, like I said, Seth Greenberg, I'm watching ESPN, like everybody's picking Florida, and everyone's Final Four had at least 3 1 seeds. Like there might have been a sneaky Michigan State or Tennessee in there,
Sure.
but like it's like that might end up happening. But how they get there is pretty much chalk too. Like they just, I don't know, they're just not
Take
fun.
some risks.
Make it fun. Yeah, pick USCD.
Because
Pick
you know what the
Yale.
consequences are if you get it wrong? Absolutely nothing.
Nothing except you lose
But
out
if
on
you
a bunch of prizes for the Broadway Shuffle.
Yeah,
For
you're
Yeah.
exactly right. Yeah.
But if you
Anyway.
if you do, as Zyler was talking about, you don't look to the guys on TV that
Look
know
at
what
guys
they're
on
talking about.
YouTube.
Exactly. Zyler
Sorry.
Buchanan, Clayton Anderson, and the Broadway Shuffle people here. This is where you come for your real information. So maybe we'll have to fill
a
out a
great
bracket
point,
on,
Conrad.
on
That is
the,
a
Conrad,
on the
you are the smartest guy I know.
on the YouTube. So
That's the best
look at
take all night.
yeah,
What-
exactly. So
Conrad, but okay, can we talk about Conrad getting told he looks like Tommy Lloyd, the Arizona head coach, for a second? Because
That's actually hilarious.
because since that's been said, and I
I'm not
look
mad
him,
at it. I think it's accurate.
he's a handsome guy, man. You got, I mean, just like you. It's a great
I could be
comparison.
compared to looking like, I don't know, Chris Beard.
I got told I look like David Spade like 9 times in the last 2 months. I don't know if that's necessarily a good comparison, but I've had multiple people. Clayton and I were in the airport in Colorado 4 times after I had been told this, and this woman comes up and goes, "You know who you look like?" And I'm like, "Don't even say it." And I had just got done telling this story to all the guys that weekend, and she goes, "David Spade," and I was like, "Dude, good lord, I might need to ask my parents for questions. It's getting kind of scary.
Dude, I think I get told I look like the guy from Blue's Clues from back in the day, and that's like a weird.
Really?
No, he does, dude.
Yeah.
You do. Can we pull that up?
Yeah.
Can we pull up the Blues Clues guy
Let me see
real
if I
quick?
can find. It's hard to find. It's always at a bar or something like that, and somebody says it, and I got to go find who it is.
Oh my gosh, dude, you do look like him.
Here, we'll put it in the comments
Here.
below. We'll put it in the
Hold on, I've got it.
You just made
I'm not
Conrad's
racist.
editing life so much harder. He's like, Conrad's like, don't pull it up.
I'm like, don't
It's
do
funny.
it. Just Google
it's
it.
funny because
Please
the
just
article
Google it.
says Steve. Okay, I won't show it.
Okay.
The article I found says Blue's Clues Steve Burns asked for help and he got into a lot of trouble. So
Uh-oh.
I won't
Okay.
show that picture.
Let's put that article.
Yeah,
in
let's
the
stop that.
Let's put that article in the description below. All right.
Okay.
Well, we'll do some more lookalikes. Let us know who you think our celebrity lookalikes are. That'd be a lot of fun as well. So we'll be back tomorrow as well. We're gonna hopefully have Texas Tech insider Chris Level on from Wichita. We've talked to Chris. He's hoping to come on. He'll have some time. And then we're also going to get more into Texas Tech's matchup specifically against UNCW and see what the Seahawks are all about. Kind of go through, what you need to do to make sure you're taking care of business there. And then we'll also be back Thursday morning as well. We're going to do a lot of more little fun bracket games, what if scenarios across the whole field of 68. So you will not want to miss any episode this week. We will be back for that as well. So for Conrad, Zyler, and Clayton, or I should say for Tommy Lloyd, Blues Clues, and Clayton,
David
I don't know
Spade.
who you are, but I'm David Spade, and we'll see you guys tomorrow on the Broadway Shuffle. Wreck 'em.